Glen Kelman has been the president and CEO of Redfin since 2005. If there is anybody who's in tune with the housing market, it is him. As the leader of one of the world's most popular real estate technology companies, he sees the details of the market in extreme detail on a day-to-day basis. 5 days ago, on April 17th, he came out and shocked everyone by pronouncing that the housing market was in a massive recession. He argues that although many perceive the economy as thriving, the housing market is suffering greatly, unlike anything he has witnessed in his 2 decades of experience. What Kelman is alluding to here is what many agents and real estate people have been saying for over a year now. Sure, on the surface, prices and monthly payments are at all-time highs, but from the perspective of volume, there has never been a market just like this one. You would think that because homes are doing so well from a pure pricing perspective, everyone involved in real estate would be getting rich, but that fact is far from the truth. Look no further than the company he leads and its stock price. From the depths of the 2020 recession to the peak in 2021, RDFN went from $11.60 a share to nearly $97, an absurd 732% increase, reflecting the euphoria of the market in the post-2020 world. But not soon after that, following the rate shock and inventory struggles in real estate, RDFN dropped off a cliff, falling 95%, wiping away all gains dating back to 2017. Currently, Redfin stock is priced at $5.14, and the company's rapid cash burn is causing concern among investors. From their perspective, the market is undoubtedly in a massive recession with almost no hope of a rebound. According to the National Association of Realtors, existing home sales, a metric tracking monthly home transactions, has fallen nearly 24% from recent peaks. Despite earlier signs of improvement, the housing market remains constrained with no evident signs of recovery. In fact, the latest data from March indicates a further decline of over 4% in existing home sales on a month-to-month basis. This metric was supposed to be helped along by falling interest rates, but there seems to be no relief in that area either. Since September of 2022, the average 30-year rate in this country has remained above 6%, and today it sits at 7.44%. There was a common belief that the Fed would soon begin to push rates down, but following some unexpected news regarding inflation numbers, that theory has now been replaced, and the phrase higher for longer is taking over once again. To make matters worse, it's pretty clear that this time around, these rate hikes are not doing much in terms of price relief. It was previously believed that when the Fed pushes up rates like this, it would at least tame or address the pricing issues we saw in the market, but instead, housing has remained resilient. It almost seems like every time the Fed raises the rate, the opposite happens and home prices continue to move up in tangent. Kelman actually directly addresses these market conditions, recalling his experience as CEO during the great financial crisis, saying sales volume went down, but so did prices, explaining that typically one problem resolves the other. In the usual cycle, a decline in sales leads to lower prices, which eventually makes homes more affordable and boosts sales. However, the current situation is very different. Interest rates are up and sales volume has plummeted, yet home prices have not decreased accordingly. He attributed this anomaly partly due to the nature of the 30-year mortgages. According to Kelman, the actions of the Federal Reserve have little impact on homeowners beyond keeping them stationary, paradoxically maintaining high home prices. 3 months ago, he actually did an interview with David Lin, and when asked about prices, he made it very clear that the recession that is coming may look a lot like this. Take a listen.
Newsweek, for example, reported that homeowners lose $122,000 on average as housing prices drop. New homeowners, I'll just read you a paragraph. New homeowners across the U.S. are confronting a rapid depreciation in their home values. Recent data showing an average loss of $122,000 in home value in some areas. The American dream is showing signs of wear, says. Is that a data that you're observing as well? That we're seeing rapid depreciation in home values, is in their words?
I just feel more careful about it. And it's not because I'm a real estate broker. I've been a long advocate for lower home prices. It's just that rates fell from 8 to 6.5. And the number of people piling onto our website, looking at listings over just the last 7 days has really gone up. And so even my own feelings about whether home prices could soften have changed. I do think that the builders, when they sell new properties, that has gotten a little bit bubbly because there's so few existing homes for sale. The builders have been able to command a premium, and then sometimes you have some buyer's remorse there. But for the most part, I haven't seen kind of precipitous declines that I saw in 2008. In 2008, I bought my own home at the very bottom of the market. Um, and you know, it was 30-40% off. I just haven't seen that here. What we are seeing is it's really hard right now to put buyers and sellers together. We're in the business of putting deals together, and the buyer is looking for 100,000 off, and the seller is willing to give $5,000 off. And that always happens, but usually the gap is $10,000 or $20,000. And right now the gap is really large. And that just speaks to the volatility of the market where everyone is feeling a high degree of uncertainty. And if they're going to do a deal, they're going to try to do it on their terms. So it's been really hard to put deals together until like the past 2 or 3 weeks. And then people have pounced just because of the rate.
So as you can tell, according to Kelman, it's actually very unlikely we will see any sort of decline like 2008. And the biggest evidence for this we see is in the inventory data. You can see from Bill McBride's charts that inventory back in 2008 was on a different level when compared to today. If we look at this specific chart, you can see that according to the blue line, which shows year-over-year changes, we can see that inventory is growing from the perspective of recent numbers. And to make matters worse, it's doing so at a rate that should be setting off alarms. But the other line tells the true story. The red shows the actual months of supply, and as you can tell, we are still very low from a historical perspective. Currently, months of supply is at 3.2 months, which is far below the numbers we saw before the 2008 crash. If we take a look back there, we can see that months of supply was nearly 2 times higher in the months right before the crash started. For today's environment to really become concerning, what we need to see is something like this: a massive move up that rapidly approaches that 7 months of supply figure. This would imply that buyers are pulling away and sellers are dumping, which is far from the case we see in today's market. While there are a lot of people on YouTube and throughout the internet that will cherry pick certain aspects of the market, there really is only one chart that truly showcases this future in an easy to understand way. Home prices here in the United States can be largely explained by just looking at this. This here is the infamous Bill McBride inventory price chart. Sure, it may look confusing, but you can almost guarantee that any sort of price crash in the housing market will begin to appear here first. Although it may look confusing at first, this chart is pretty simple. What Bill has done is placed months of supply on the y-axis and the month-over-month price change on the x-axis. For a true price crash to occur, what you generally need is a piling up of inventory and panic selling. And as you can tell by looking at this area of the graph, this is what was happening back in 2008. You had massive inventory levels approaching 10 months, and of course, at the same time, you had a massive price slash, sometimes as high as negative 1.5% per month. Today, we are in this quadrant, which means we are actually seeing price appreciation and healthy inventory levels. The main point is this: until we see these new dots start moving towards this corner, the hope for price crashes is nothing more than that: hope. As long as inventory is strong, there just isn't a way to push prices down in a meaningful way. And even if prices begin to move, they typically do so in a painfully slow manner. The summary of all this is pretty simple. In 2024, the best we can hope for is a slowing of prices. And given the inventory situation and the rate situation, this new housing environment seems to be the new normal. While articles like this will have you believing that prices are set to crash, what they're really saying is that from the perspective of Redfin, the housing market is in a volume recession. For the business side, yes, there is not a lot of money to be made in real estate given some of the recent court rulings and volume numbers, but from a buyer perspective, the pain is still deep. High interest rates have essentially locked in many people from the pre-2020 days, which leaves supply levels low and prices high. Even by Redfin's own report, you can see that from the side of a buyer, right now is one of the hardest markets in recent memory. Asking prices continue to go up, rates are at 7.5%, insurance costs have skyrocketed, and taxes have followed suit. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and as always, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed it.